My name is Chase Johnson. I'm from Denver, Colorado, and we have used C3 Group several times on some of our large loss commercials and our higher end residential for their appraisal services and their public adjusting services. Their knowledge of the market, of the ever-changing regulations, and their ability to create a very thorough estimate from an understanding of construction and the management of the project.
Hey there, Hail Stalkers. This is Derek Klein. We are in the Hail Palace, and not for long. We're headed to Florida here shortly, so planning to make the journey down to Florida tomorrow for Hurricane Dorian. So some exciting stuff coming up here. First, before we jump in though, kind of taking a look at the whole forecast, everything that's going on here. Gotta switch this over here to the PowerPoint. There we go. So taking a look at everything that's going on forecast wise here. We've got a lot to talk about. We're going to briefly talk about hail, and then I kind of tease that we're going to kind of geek out together on Hurricane Dorian, because it's a pretty neat little storm, and we want to see exactly what's going on. So here it is real briefly. Today, August 30th, our hail forecast. Denver, you are in the forecast area, so we'll keep an eye out, but right now 5% chance. I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's actually going to be just to the east, which is pretty common this time of year, kind of a seasonal forecast here, but hail up to 2 inches possible, and there are a few locations out here that definitely could get hit with some larger hail as we go through the afternoon and evening hours. And here's kind of what it looks like radar wise. So as we jump forward here to take a look at that, let's see here, there we go. So here it is, complex of storms moving out of Oklahoma City now. New thunderstorms develop, but notice the most robust thunderstorms basically stay out to the east of I-25, which means Colorado Springs, Denver. Very low chance for some hail, but it is possible. So again, we'll go about a 5% chance for some large hail across the Front Range. Higher chances just to the east out in the plains. Now it's time, let's go for it here. Our C3 group, our Merlin Law group, tropical check-in. We're going to check in, see what's going on with the forecast for Hurricane Dorian. So lots of great stuff here going forward here. My clicker is just not wanting to do its thing. Let's see here, come on. Where is it? Did we lose our battery? Come on, clicker. Let's try to reset it here. If not, we will use the mouse. Mouse it is. All right, so let's, that may not be my clicker, it might be my computer. How about that? That feels good. All right, so here we go. So here it is, Hurricane Dorian, max sustained winds. Now we're gonna have a new update coming out here shortly, but right now at 110 miles per hour, okay? So winds are, again, they've come up quite a bit this morning, and if you look at the actual structure, this is actually a floater, a visible floater, and it just looks gorgeous. But so if you look at everything, and actually the eye has actually come out. So when I took this video here, the eye had not quite come out, but you can see all the convection that was going up around the center. And what's really cool is if you look at this, you can actually see how the structure of this hurricane is actually taking off and growing in. So you can see these waves that are expanding and kind of pushing out away from the hurricane. This is the actual outflow where the hurricane, so the hurricane, you can see underneath here, these clouds right here, as they move in underneath the hurricane, they'll actually spin around the center of it, and then it'll actually shoot the air up out the top, and then it expands out, and you can see it expanding out across the top and the bottom. Then we actually have an upper level low right over here that's actually pulling and also helping to shoot air out. Now this upper level low is actually working in two ways. One way, it's actually helping the hurricane with its outflow pattern, but it's actually hurting or hampering the hurricane because it's actually caused a little bit of shear, and it's also, with its rotation, has actually pulled up some dry air across the surface, and so that's what's actually kept the eye from forming. Now, most of that dry air is now being blocked by the island of Hispaniola, which has actually allowed it to, the core to actually expand much better. So now we have a better eye, and the eye has actually come out. We actually have sunshine inside of the eye. So I expect probably on the next update that we'll have a major hurricane. So it'll be a Cat 3 hurricane, which would be at least 115 mile an hour winds. But we'll have to kind of watch that and see what that looks like here. And we'll see if we can get our next slide to go through. It's these visible satellite images that really slow everything down. They're pretty pretty heavy for the computer to run off of. So here's the forecast currently from the National Hurricane Center. If you're in Florida and you're prepping for the hurricane, this is what I want you to go off of, okay? So I want you to go to nhc.noaa.gov. This is where you need to be paying attention to the latest forecast. Notice that we have the pink in the Bahamas now. That means we have a hurricane watch in place. And they're forecasting, we're going to talk about how they're coming up with this here briefly. Whoa, look at that. We're going to go backwards here. I think it's trying to catch up with me now. Let's see if we can get, now we're going, there we go. Now we get it back. Everything's catching up. So, but notice we have the hurricane watch here that's been put into effect for the Bahamas. And I would expect probably in about 24 hours, so probably sometime tomorrow, we'll have a hurricane watch issued for Florida. And I would expect somewhere up near Daytona, all the way down to probably where the Keys start is where we'll see that hurricane watch actually issued. But what we want to pay attention to on this forecast, first of all, right in here we still have major hurricane making landfall. Looks like a Cat 4 hurricane winds around 140, 145 miles an hour. That's sustained. We could see gusts well over 150, especially right up on the coast. So it could get really, really, really crazy windy right up on the coast of Florida. And that's kind of what we're going to be watching for. But notice we kind of northwest, we basically veer back to the west, and then we come on shore, and then an immediately sharp turn to the north. But notice how slow the movement is here. This is 24 hours from here, the Bahamas, to the Florida coast, 24 hours from the Florida coast to basically Orlando, and we're still a hurricane at Orlando. So we're talking winds 75 miles an hour sustained, probably right on the coast, up here from like Jacksonville down towards Daytona, but gusts in the 80 to 90 mile per hour range 24 hours after landfall, 24 to 36 hours after landfall, up central Florida. So impacts are going to be felt well inland, and they're going to last for quite a while with this storm. So this could be a really, really nasty storm. So let's go ahead and take a look here at what we expect to see, okay? So I'm going to jump over here. We're going to trade sides, okay? And here's what we've got. So here's our satellite image. You can see Dorian right here coming into view, and there you can actually see the eye as it comes into play here. Now we're going to look at this satellite, and we're actually going to take a look at everything that we can kind of dissect it and see what it actually looks like. So here's what we've got. We've got a high pressure ridge right up here in the Atlantic. This is current. This is what we're looking at currently. Okay, we've actually got a trough of low pressure that drapes across northern Florida here, and you can actually see the clouds kind of firing up here. And if you actually look at the clouds, you can see they're being stretched and pulled across Florida into the Gulf of Mexico. And then we've actually got this little low pressure. You can barely see it right down there off on the edge of my screen here. And that's the upper level low that's actually been causing some of the dry air, but also been helping with that outflow. We just talked about that a minute ago on our close-up satellite view. Now what that's done is it's created this pattern or this flow, and you can see with the arrows here. And if you notice, the flow pattern says, hey, it should just kind of come right down the middle of this, right? And that's basically what we're going to see. Now, it's easy to say right now in this time frame that here's the flow pattern. Here's where everything is going to flow from. The problem is that this trough of low pressure, this high pressure ridge, and this upper level low down here, they're all going to move. They're not just stationary objects that are going to stay there for the next several days. So here's what's going to happen. So we're going to take the arrows off, and then we're going to see where everything's forecast to move. So we expect our trough of low pressure to move back out here into the center of Gulf of Mexico. Notice that our low pressure basically pulled away. So what that's going to do is that's actually going to cause the wind shear. We've had about 10 to 15 knots of wind shear on the hurricane the last several days. It's going to actually cause the wind shear to go away, which is going to create a more favorable environment for strengthening. And then our high pressure ridge is going to build into and very, very close to Florida here, to the north side of Florida. So what that does is it creates us a path where the hurricane basically comes up and over and then may even bend back to the south a little bit and then impacts somewhere in central or southern Florida. Okay, so that's if this is the scenario. So, and that's pretty much what the expected scenario is. So again, high pressure builds out, we watch our hurricane come across, and as our hurricane comes across, it actually bends to the north, which expands our impact region here, where we think the worst impacts would be, basically all up and down. May they extend back to Tampa? It depends on how far inland it comes, but definitely I think man, if you're in Miami, big time impacts expected all the way up the coast, all the way up to Jacksonville, and then I think inland far enough that we will feel pretty significant impacts with Orlando as well. And this is the most likely scenario as it stands. Okay? Now, there is another scenario that could potentially happen, and that's what this looks like. And that's if the hurricane continues to slow down, okay, puts on the brakes, and so as it comes up to the shore, this high pressure wedge, we know it's going to build across, but it's also going to weaken and retreat back as a trough of low pressure comes into the U.S. Talking about stuff here, right? So this is why they're so hard to forecast. Okay, so we know that this is going to retreat at some point. We don't know exactly what point it's going to retreat back, but as the hurricane slows down, it has a higher likelihood of that retreating back. And if that were to happen, it could potentially open the door for the hurricane to swing off and go offshore. This right now looks like the most unlikely scenario, but we're talking about a difference of about 50 to 60 miles. Okay, so this is not a big, I mean, we're talking if it comes into Florida like our first scenario and goes right up the central part of the state, this is not very far from here to here. Okay, now, if it does come right up the coast like that, we're still not talking about no impacts, right? This is a significant hurricane, so we're still talking about major impacts all the way up the coast as it basically scrapes and moves across and around the bend of the hurricane. So really, really cool stuff. Feel free to throw your questions in here. I'll see if I can find them, see if we can pull them up and answer some questions for you. But as it stands right now, here's basically what we know. Okay, so we know forecasted landfall. We don't really know where it's going to go yet, right? Because there's a lot of variables that could play in that. Now we do have some, and we have some really good model consistency with where it's going to make landfall, but it's not 100%. So good model consistency, we're pretty confident, but there definitely is still a chance that we could have some changes. Conditions are favorable for a major hurricane and a major landfalling hurricane, specifically in Florida. But again, conditions change. Slower speeds will increase the damage, but may also cause a curve out to sea. So we're going to have to watch all of these three parameters. That's kind of what we know right now, and that's what we're going to be watching for. So lots and lots to talk about. I'm going to try to see if we can bounce over here and take a look and see if we had any comments in here. I see that we had a whole bunch of people here watching, and I will definitely try to run through all these questions here. So let's see here. Hello. I worry about the people affected by this. Yeah, this is going to be a major event, unfortunately, and so it's not going to be very safe. Hurricane party for Michael, nice. I've heard there's some pretty epic hurricane parties in Florida. What about the west side of the coast? So as it stands right now, the west side would have the least amount of impacts. And the reason being, if we come back here, let's see if we can back up. I don't know how far back we'd have to go. But if we're looking at, like we can see it in the back here. So if we're looking at the hurricane itself, the east side of the hurricane is actually where the least amount of impacts actually occur, especially as it comes on shore. So it's the northwest quadrant right up in here is where we think the worst part of it would be, whereas the southern side is where we're going to have that offshore flow. So that would lessen the impacts for the west coast. Now, if it is the case that the hurricane can actually go a little bit further west and actually go into the Gulf, that could also increase the effects. So that right now feels like even more unlikely than the curve out to sea is that it would actually cross all the way across Florida. But it's something that we have to watch out for. Let's see here. John, I think, has been answering some of them, but let's see here. What about re-entering the Gulf? I've seen a couple questions. Yeah, so I think I just talked about that, but looks unlikely, but still possible. There are some model outcomes that are showing it going across Florida and then re-entering the Gulf. And most of those right now show if it does do that, that it will make the curve fairly quickly and then go into the Florida Panhandle somewhere. Now, for those recovering from Hurricane Michael in Panama City, that's not a good outcome, obviously. There's a lot of work still being done to recover from that. In fact, I would say they're still in the beginning stages of recovery in Panama City from Hurricane Michael, but that is a possibility, and so it's something that we'll have to watch and we'll have to kind of see what happens. And interesting enough, too, this would be the first time if a Category 4 hurricane makes landfall in Florida, this will be the first time that we've ever had 3 straight years with a Category 4 hurricane or greater making landfall in the state of Florida. So we had Hurricane Irma, we had Hurricane Michael, and then we have Dorian as well. So that would be kind of interesting. Impacts to Orlando, I saw that question come through. Thanks, John. So Orlando, I would expect that impacts could be fairly significant, not as significant as the coast. Now, wherever this thing makes landfall, if it makes landfall as a Cat 4, we're talking, I mean, catastrophic type damage, major structural damage where this decides to make landfall. Now, as it comes inland, the winds automatically, even on a strong hurricane, they drop instantly as soon as you come on land. And that's because of friction on the ground. So that slows the wind speeds down drastically. And it's kind of like putting a cog, or for those of you that are back in the day, we used to have the big round pools, right? And as kids, you do the whirlpool, right? You get the water going as fast as you could around, and then you would try to stop. Right, that's basically what a landmass does to this hurricane. Is it's somebody standing in the whirlpool and stopping it. And remember, if when you did that, it drastically slowed down the speed of the water really quickly. That's basically what's going to happen. Now, Florida is fairly low, so it's going to take a little bit longer for it to actually kind of slow down. But as you get inland, it slows down more and more and more. And so as it goes up towards Orlando, we're going to see that speed drastically slow down. Now what we'll see is we'll still see high winds. They'll be more gusty, not quite as sustained. And it really depends on where it makes landfall and then how quick it's able to curve up. So if it makes landfall in southern Florida, initially conditions will probably just be some heavy rain with some gusty winds. And when I say gusty winds, I'm saying 40, 50, maybe 60 mile an hour winds. Okay, now as it curves up and as the center gets closer, if the center goes over Orlando, that's when we could see some wind gusts in the 80 to 90 mile per hour range, and that's when we would start to see some damage occur. So, or at least the majority of the damage would occur, and that would be as long as it can get up there quick enough. Now, if it stalls and it just sets south and it weakens, and then it goes up there, then obviously we have lower winds to work about. So about 10 different scenarios are possible in Orlando, to say the least. So there's lots of possibilities there. So let's see here. So I thought I saw another question pop up. Not seeing any on there. So yeah, so that's kind of where we're at right now. And as always, if you guys have any questions, throw them in this chat. We'll try to kind of pay attention to it. And we will be, again, we're traveling to Florida, probably leaving sometime tomorrow afternoon. We'll be down in Florida on Sunday. As long as the hurricane's still expected to make landfall Tuesday morning sometime, then we will be doing this forecast live from the beach where we expect landfall on Monday. So that'll be great. We'll have all the graphics, we'll have all the updates, everything that you need to know. Also look at doing some stuff over the weekend. Vero Beach. I'm not familiar with where Vero Beach is. I think it's down south. Is that right? I see that coming through there. We're currently targeting basically Jupiter is about where we're looking at right now. So kind of south of Cocoa Beach, north of West Palm, kind of right in that area. We'll see. So we probably won't lock into anything until Sunday. And so we'll just kind of be watching it. Again, our goal is to get in the eye of the hurricane. So that's what we'll be looking to do. And hopefully we'll be able to do that. So I think Vero Beach is south, right, if I'm right. So that impacts could be extremely, Melbourne, okay, yeah. So impacts could be definitely pretty big time around there. So I would expect some high winds. Probably you're going to see some triple digits, I bet. So impacts will probably be pretty significant for sure. So with that, we are going to go ahead and call this forecast for today. It's been a whole lot of fun. I don't see any other questions in there. So again, we'll try to continue to kind of throw out some intermittent updates. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Facebook. We definitely want to give you as much information as we can, and we'll kind of shoot some stuff out that's maybe not just a full-on forecast like this throughout the weekend. And then Monday, we're going to come to you live from Florida on the beach, where we're going to do the final forecast, where we're going to give the landfall expected conditions, who's going to see what kind of winds. We're going to break all that down for you as we get into Sunday and Monday, and I think you're going to really enjoy what we have coming. And then, of course, live coverage inside of the hurricane as it comes on shore. You're definitely going to want to watch that. So look forward to chatting, and we will see you next time.